Good afternoon, everyone. We are live from Council Chambers. And before we begin, I will go over the emergency response plan for this room. In an emergency, everyone must evacuate through the nearest safe exit. Those seated in the gallery will take direction from security, and Council will take direction from myself. After evacuating the room, please proceed to a stairwell, take the stairs to ground level, and evacuate the building through the doors marked emergency exit, and go to the muster point. Do not take an elevator or walk through the city room. Anyone with limited mobility should identify themselves to security, and if you require first aid, please speak with security. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to call this non-regular City Council meeting to order, and at this time I would like to acknowledge that we meet on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory and the Métis homeland, and acknowledge the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Nakota Iska, as well as Métis and Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. I'll begin with the roll call. Councillor Knack.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Principe.
Hello.
Hello. Councillor Stevenson.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Paquette is here.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Tang.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and Mayor Sohi will not be able to join us this afternoon. Councillor Hamilton.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Rutherford.
Hello.
Hello. And Councillor Salvador.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Cartmel.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Councillor Rice.
Good afternoon.
And Councillor Jans. Oh, we'll wait.
Oh, good afternoon. I'm here.
Good afternoon. All right. I would like to also now do our declaration of pecuniary and conflict of interest. So before we consider today's agenda, I'll ask all members of council present if they have any pecuniary or conflicts of interest to declare regarding any of the items to be discussed. A pecuniary interest exists when an item could monetarily affect a member of council, their employer, or family member. And a conflict of interest exists when an item could affect a private interest of a member of council, their employer, or family member. Do any members of council have a pecuniary or conflict of interest to declare? Okay, hearing no declared pecuniary or conflicts of interest, we will move to adoption of the agenda.
I'll move the adoption of the agenda as presented.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevenson.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. No questions. Let's vote.
Councillor Stevenson is yes.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson.
Yes.
Councillor
Yes.
Jans and Councillor Rutherford, did I get that right?
Yes. And Councillor Rutherford.
Yes, we have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. And that is carried. And any protocol items for today? None that I'm aware of. All right. We will now move to selecting items for debate.
I'm happy to select item 5.1.
Thank you. And there are no other items on the agenda. No requests to speak. Nothing specific. No bylaws. No reports to be dealt with. No other requests to reschedule. And we'll move on to 5.1 public reports. But first, I think we might have a special announcement. Mr. Robar, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So this week has been full of firsts for many, with children heading back to school and routines. As a community, we are celebrating many new beginnings. Some of these new beginnings include new faces to the city. So I am pleased to introduce Sarah Nichols, who joins us as the new Deputy City Manager of Integrated Infrastructure Services. And I want to say welcome, Sarah. She's right behind me. Sarah joins us from the Government of Saskatchewan, bringing 13 years of experience in project management, strategic planning, and procurement. Most recently as the Assistant Deputy Minister of Infrastructure, Design, and Delivery, she oversaw the delivery of nearly 400 projects per year, including hospitals, schools, and government buildings. Her prior work includes establishing international offices, creating capital planning frameworks, and advancing Indigenous engagement. Her extensive project management and leadership experience will lend itself to the city's goals and objectives over the next several years, helping to build great neighborhoods, developing innovative and sustainable infrastructure in our city, and delivering on the LRT expansion and renewal. I am extremely pleased to note that Sarah will be the first woman to have held this role. And I've been part of the municipal governments for almost 25 years now, and I'm confident that Sarah will lead this team with success. Welcome, Sarah, and thank you again. I'll give her a moment to maybe say a couple of words, too.
Thank you so much, Eddie, for the warm introduction, and thank you to council members. I'm very excited to be here. I'm ready to help build our great and growing city. I'm a big believer in public service. I look forward to serving Edmonton. I'm also new, like many others in a growing city, and so far I've just been blown away by the kindness and welcome I've received from my new colleagues and my new neighbors. So thank you so much. I'm excited to help support the goals of council.
And just before we turn it back over, I would also like to thank Craig Wabbaum. So, he led the integrated infrastructure service team for quite some time. This has been a long transition period for this group, but his expertise and dedication helped the team succeed during the transition period, and we're incredibly grateful for his contributions as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Sarah, for coming to Edmonton. We were all new at one time, so you join a very good club. So thank you again, and I think we will move on now to our presentation on the municipal funding arrangements.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council. We're presenting to you today highlights of the first formal City of Edmonton municipal funding arrangements outcome reporting. With me today are various members of administration as well as representatives from our external agencies, boards, and commissions who are here virtually to help address any questions that you may have. Marlene Fair, our Finance Director supporting Community Services, who is one of the key members of the municipal funding arrangements team who helped put all this together for you today, will be helping me provide the presentation as well. So what is outcome reporting? Outcome reporting refers to the annual process to update council and the public on funds provided by the city to external organizations through municipal funding arrangements and the broader impact and changes achieved in the community as a result of that funding, including an assessment of how effective an initiative was at advancing city council goals. The report before council represents the beginning of a new outcome reporting process and is based on funding provided to external parties in 2024. It summarizes funds by city goals and categories and details how funds were spent and how outcomes were achieved. So in this presentation, we will explore what municipal funding arrangements are and the introduction of outcome reporting, discuss the types of municipal funding arrangements. Since this is a fairly lengthy and extensive report, we thought it would be helpful to provide council with a quick overview of the report and the content and how to navigate it. We will go over how municipal funding is allocated to support a wide range of community needs and highlight the tangible outcomes and positive impacts of these investments across our city. The intent today is to share with you funding provided to organizations and how that funding was used to achieve outcomes. So we do encourage you to use this information to help with future budget and funding level discussions in those upcoming budget discussions, but we ask that we refrain from getting into detailed budget discussions today as much as possible. Next slide. Municipal funding arrangements, or MFAs as we refer to them, are the allocation and management of financial resources provided by the city to external organizations to support various public services, projects, programs, and operational needs. There are a variety of funding types that result in a municipal funding arrangement, with varying degrees of reporting requirements per the newly updated municipal funding arrangements policy and procedure. These funding types are classified as grants, which are formal funding programs where eligibility requirements, as well as an application and selection process. Examples include the Community Safety and Wellbeing Grant Program and the Affordable Housing Investment Grant Program. Subsidies are where financial assistance or operating support is provided outside of a formal funding program to support delivery of particular program or service within an external organization. So some of the subsidies the city provides are for homelessness prevention, extreme weather response, and festivals and events. Rebates are funding or incentive programs designed to encourage specific practices. So one example of this would be the solar rebate program that incentivizes the installation of solar panels on homes. Sponsorships are financial contributions towards an event or activity in exchange for recognition for the city. So in other words, the city would be credited publicly for having contributed to an event. And finally, ongoing operating funding is provided to 10 of our agencies, boards, and commissions, which we will identify you on an upcoming slide, which can also be considered an operating subsidy. We have shown these funding arrangements to our ABCs separately throughout the report as they account for majority of the municipal funding arrangements from a dollar perspective. Next slide, please. So for context, the new annual outcome reporting process was developed in response to the May 2023 findings and recommendations from the Office of the City Auditor audit of municipal funding arrangements that city provides externally. The audit noted inconsistencies in administration of municipal funding arrangements, including monitoring compliance and lack of evaluation to determine whether MFAs are achieving their intended outcomes. In response to the audit findings, administration committed to a number of actions. First, a review of existing governing documents, which resulted in an updated municipal funding arrangement administrative policy and procedure that went into effect of November 2024. Secondly, the development of a compliance monitoring process. Essentially, this is an internal audit completed by financial services of funding arrangements across the organization to ensure areas are following updated policies and procedures and that the agreements are properly drafted with appropriate reporting requirements, including the outcome reporting you see in front of you today. Next, the development of outcome reporting guidance for external funding recipients. Outcome reporting provided by external funding recipients is used to generate the consolidated outcome reporting that you have in front of you today. Lastly, the creation of training materials and resources for city staff involved in administration of municipal funding arrangements. So our conversation today will be focused on number 3 here on the slide, the reporting of municipal funding arrangement outcomes and how they tie to the advancement of city's strategic goals. Next slide, please. For reference, the 10 ABCs shown on this slide are included in the municipal funding arrangements outcome reporting and are reflected as they are in the 23 to 26 approved operating budget. In totality, they receive significant funding from the city in order to operate and are required to follow the city's budget process, including preparation of a 4-year business plan and budgets. Whenever we talk about ABCs in the presentation, the report, or any of the attachments, this is the list that we're referring to. Next slide, please. The City of Edmonton utilizes municipal funding arrangements to support a wide range of service providers, aiming to advance strategic priorities that contribute to a more inclusive, vibrant, healthy, prosperous, and sustainable city. These arrangements encompass internal funding programs, which are our grant programs, specific council-directed funding, and support for ABCs, as well as below-market nonprofit leases. The report highlights outcomes by funding type, city goal, funding category, plus reporting specific to the ABCs, and a brief commentary on the nonprofit below-market leases. More detailed supplemental information is provided throughout the 14 attachments in the report. So this slide is a visual that helps explain how the outcome reporting is categorized and reflected within the attachments. So the blue categories here, you see on the left side of the screen, are the categories of business, community, and housing funding, are what we referred to throughout the report as our internal funding programs. The green category that's listed as council directed refers to just that, things that council has approved outside of our formal internal funding programs. Council directed funding differs from internal funding programs as it's approved often on one-off basis and outside the city's established funding grant programs. So these two categories, the blue and green ones, are detailed in attachment 2, including applicable funding programs, the recipients, a funding overview, and the 2024 funding amount provided to those organizations. We also talk about examples of activities and outputs that support the achievement of outcomes aligned with the city's 4 strategic goals. Next, you'll see ABC, the categories listed as ABC on this slide, which are in purple, that have been summarized briefly in the cover report, referring readers to attachment 4 to 13, which are the detailed outcome reporting submitted by each of the individual ABCs. Similar to internal funding programs, the ABC attachments have identified funding programs or projects with associated activities, outputs, and outcomes, and how these achievements support city goals. Finally, on the far right-hand side of the screen here, the pink below market lease category includes building or land leases provided by the city to registered nonprofit entities, granting access and use for a specified term at a rate less than fair market value. These leases do not result in a cash outlay, however, they do represent operating support to these organizations as they are not being charged market lease rates. Administration is currently finalizing the assessment of the market value of nonprofit leases and is expecting to complete this assessment in 2026. As this work is still underway, the report makes no estimate of the value of these leases, and in turn, the operating support provided to those organizations through the below market leases. A list of the organizations receiving these below market leases is included in attachment 14 to the report. So not yet mentioned are attachments 1 and 3 in the report. Attachment 1 is a summary of attachment 2 in a less detailed and more easily digestible format. And attachment 3 is a summary of the key changes made to the municipal funding arrangements policy and procedure to support improvements in funding arrangements process, including improved strategic alignment, oversight, clarity, consistency, efficiency, effectiveness, and reporting. Next slide, please. So moving on to the highlights of the report, this graph shows the operating funding provided in each of the last 5 years by funding types of grants, subsidies, rebates, sponsorships, and subsidies provided to agencies, boards, and commissions. As you can see, the majority of the municipal funding arrangement spending is provided through grants, subsidies, and funding for the agencies, boards, and commissions. The graph also shows that the funding jumped considerably from 2020 to 2021 and were then sustained at that level of around 200 million plus. Primarily, the jump in 2021 is due to a significant increase in housing-related programs funded from the Housing Reserve, tax levy, and flow through provincial and federal funding. Funding to our ABCs has also steadily increased by 28.4 million, from 104.3 million in 2020 to 132.7 million in 2024. So this is largely due to additional funding for Edmonton Unlimited in 2021, but also due to funding increases to the library, REACH, and others over the years. So of the total 236.4 million of funding provided in 2024 to external agencies, approximately 12%, or 28 million, was supported by external funding sources. In other words, 88% of city funding, and in other words, 88% was city funding, and the rest represents the flow-through funding from other orders of government. Most of this is attributable to the Provincial Family and Community Support Services grant, which represents around $21 million of this $28 million. The market value of nonprofit leases has been excluded from this and other graphs throughout the report for the reasons I just previously mentioned. Next slide, please. So this slide presents the municipal funding arrangements by funding category this time. The graph on this slide reflects the 2024 operating funding of $236.4 million provided to external groups by funding category and forms the basis of the outcome reporting. The pie chart, which aligns with attachment 2, shows the total $236.4 million funding breakdown by funding category as covered in the previous slide. So 17 million, or 7.2%, was provided to support business-related programs. 49.9 million, or 21.1%, of the funding supported community-related programs. 29.5 million, or 12.5%, was for housing-related programs. Council directed 7.4 million, or 3.1% of the total funding. So again, this represents funding that City Council has directed through motions to external agencies that do not fall within one of the city's pre-existing grant programs. Our objective here is to report and show this to Council and track it from year to year through this outcome reporting. Approximately 50%, or 3.6 million of this approved funding, is ongoing, some dating as far back as 1998. The remaining 3.8 million was approved as one-time for 2024 or multi-year from dates ranging between 2022 to 2026. Finally, 132.7 million, or 56.1%, is funding provided to our agencies, boards, and commissions, the largest portion of the overall funding provided to external agencies. Next slide, please. And lastly, this slide presents the municipal funding arrangements by city goals. So a third way to look at this. While the City of Edmonton actively invests significant financial resources into the fabric of its community by way of funding arrangements, this isn't just spending, it's an intentional allocation of funds to foster a healthier, more vibrant, and resilient community by empowering diverse partners and targeting investments towards specific, impactful outcomes that align with the city's long-term strategic vision. So the first part of this table summarizes the non-ABC funding of 103.7 million, which is our own city internal grant programs and the council-directed funding, and shows that the primary alignment of each MFA to our 4 city goals of healthy city, urban places, regional prosperity, and climate resilience, even though many funding arrangements touch more than one goal. ABC funding is noted on this table, but it's not broken out by city goal advanced, as these 10 organizations help the city collectively work towards all 4 of these Connect Edmonton goals. Please see Table 3 and Attachment 1 for the goals advanced by ABCs, as well as further details and attachments 4 to 13 for each of the individual ABCs. And I'll pass it over to Marlene to talk more about the Connect Edmonton goals.
Thank you. It is also not just about the allocation of money, it is about what the money achieves. These next few slides are a brief summary, primarily of outcomes from Connect Edmonton that were advanced through the 2024 MFAs listed by city goal. Under the goal of Healthy City, the outcomes that were advanced are associated with improved safety, enhanced mental and physical well-being, increased social inclusion and equity, support for vulnerable populations, capacity building, and an improved sense of community. It paints a picture of tangible benefits reaching various segments of the population. Next slide, please. Urban Places outcomes focused on vibrant, inclusive, and sustainable communities, with an emphasis on livable neighborhoods that embrace diversity and affordability, vibrant urban spaces where people and businesses thrive, increased accessibility to meet the needs and interests of older adults, regional collaboration on growth and development, and opportunities for Edmontonians to connect, stay active, and celebrate the city's unique heritage, identity, and diversity. Next slide. 2024 funding also advanced strategy focused on economic growth and community vibrancy. This was achieved through work that drove innovation, competitiveness, and global relevance for the Edmonton business community, attracted skills, talent, and investment, provided opportunities and support to Edmontonians, entrepreneurs, and investors, created a design to foster a strong sense of place, celebrating unique attributes, diversity, and opportunities, and set to establish downtown as a destination. Next slide. And finally, the primary outcomes that were influenced within the climate resilience goal include environmental stewardship, economic adaptation, and shared leadership. I'll turn the back over to Harm.
Thanks, Marlene. So this report is the first holistic corporate-wide assessment of municipal funding arrangements and outcomes achieved through that funding provided to external agencies. So going through this process and developing the report was a very big step in demonstrating where the city is providing funding to support organizations and how that funding is being used. That being said, it also highlighted to us that the outcome reporting process has room for growth. While city administration and external organizations did significantly advance the outcome reporting this year, we acknowledge that the process needs to continue to improve for both the city and recipient organizations. The primary goal of outcome reporting is to assess if city funding to external organizations achieves its intended objectives and advances city goals. We learned that this assessment is challenging to conduct, and that the outcome reporting process is currently not mature enough to fully achieve this task. Currently, many municipal funding arrangements lack clear, measurable outcomes, and not all organizations report on outcomes achieved in a consistent and meaningful way that we can roll up into a consolidated outcome report. This highlights the need for a cultural shift towards accountability, where recipient organizations must clearly demonstrate how funds contribute to city goals, including council-directed funding. The process also needs to mature with funding agreements and internal grant programs clearly defining measurable outcomes and recipient organizations tracking fund utilization against these outcomes. So as a result, this first outcome report lacks a definitive statement on assessment of outcome achievement. This year, we have summarized funds by city goals and categories detailing how they were spent and outcomes influenced, but we were not able to confidently conclude whether those outcomes met expectations for the reasons I just mentioned above. The outcome reporting process is expected to mature over the next few years, requiring business areas and funded organizations to adapt to a new reporting requirement framework. This will be a learning process, and we hope to eventually have a consolidated outcome report to council that assesses the effectiveness in a conclusive way of MFAs in achieving the intended outcomes. So with all that being said, as I said, this was still a huge accomplishment and a significant step in the right direction when it comes to outcome reporting. And I would suggest perhaps one of the most thorough and informative outcome-based reporting we saw across the country when it comes to municipalities reporting on funding provided to external organizations. So I wanted to take this opportunity to thank the team at the city who really dug in and put all of this together. This required a lot of time, effort, and collaboration across the city, and I'm very thankful for that. I also wanted to say thank you to our external partners who were very supportive and cooperative in providing us the information we needed to put this first outcome reporting together. So that ends our presentation. Thanks for your time. As I mentioned, we have members of administration and representatives from our ABCs here to help answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation and all the information in the reports. Do we have anybody who wants to sign up for questions? Councillor Stevenson, you selected it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate this body of work. It's certainly a lot to consolidate, and as you say, sort of sets a foundation for some more work to come. And so maybe just to start, just wondering around the timing of this report, was there a thought that this would help to inform any upcoming budget decisions, or is it mainly just sort of a milestone checkpoint prior to some of that further strategic work that's underway?
Yeah, when we started putting together the kind of the process and the framework for this, we were intending for this to kind of come maybe a couple of months or a month before budget discussions, so that you can leverage this information for those budget discussions. So that was the intention.
Okay, interesting. And we're just in that awkwardness right now, I guess, because I do think that this is really helpful information for the council that will be making those budget decisions in the fall, and that might look different than it does right now. So perhaps this is an important piece to include in any orientation or prep for the budget process. Just curious, a question that I've heard was just why Edmonton Police Commission and Edmonton Police Service wasn't included as an ABC?
Right, so Edmonton Police Commission and Edmonton Police Services, so we considered having them as a part of this reporting. There's a lot of other reporting they do to the commission and council specifically when they bring their business plan and their annual reporting. So there are other venues that they come and do this through, so we left that to those existing reporting streams, and we didn't put them as a part of this outcome reporting. So we thought there was enough opportunity in other ways for them to have this discussion with council.
Okay, well, that actually leads to one of my other questions, was just that we do have annual reports from our other ABCs, and so just wanting to understand, does this replace those? Does this, will we just coordinate those so that they're coming at the same time now?
Yeah, really good questions. So these are, a lot of the questions you're asking are the ones we kind of asked ourselves as we went through the process for the first time. So we're thinking of this as a way to consolidate the specific outcomes across the corporation in one report. So we are looking at those other touch points those organizations have with council and seeing is there a way we can streamline it to make it more concise and coming all at once. We haven't got there yet, but something we're considering moving forward.
Yeah, I could see huge value in that, and as you say, just ensuring that consistency between different groups, I think would be really great. So another, just in terms of the nonprofit leases, so again, the report references, I think it says staff are looking into assessing the market value of those nonprofit leases. Am I correct too that there's work to develop an overall leasing strategy, a nonprofit leasing strategy?
I think I'll hand that over to Mr. Hodgson. Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Harm. Yes, Councillor, administration is currently reviewing our nonprofit leasing guidelines. And certainly the work or any recommendation will be tied into reporting requirements that align with this MFA work as well.
Great, and I think, well, and that's quite interesting as well. So the idea is that you will capture do a similar outcome assessment for nonprofit leasing as well?
The idea is that the provision of space for nominal fees provides value to these organizations. And so a part of that work will be to ensure that there is regular reporting that ties into this, yes.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. And just in terms of the timelines, again, I think some of the work, it's referenced that it will be done in 2026. You know, I just recognize there are folks on the list whose leases are expiring this year or next year. Are we able to provide some level of assurance to those existing groups? Like, we're not making any changes to our practices or policies until we have that policy conversation. Is that correct?
Yes, Councillor, we're being thoughtful in terms of any renewals for those groups. There is a nonprofit leasing guideline that does exist today, and as that policy is in place, the leases that are currently existing will be managed following that policy. Any additional recommendations that Council chooses to adopt through that review when it comes back to Council for consideration would obviously take into or be in effect for future renewals for those organizations.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Thanks again. Thanks for all the work.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Salvador?
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate reading through this, and congratulations for putting together this as a really good starting point and foundation. Maybe a few clarifying questions to start. So the bar chart that shows 2020 to 2024, there's sort of that step change in 2020. Is there anything you can share around the context of pre-2019? Just trying to understand, was that kind of a pandemic-related response where things went down and then we're back up to a more consistent level, or have things bumped up overall?
So I think like the increase from I'd have to look back to see what 2019 was. I know the increase from 2020 to 2021 was a lot of the affordable housing stuff we had mentioned. So yeah, we'll look into what 2019 was. Just curious to see even a few years prior to see, like, has there been sort of a continual trend upwards, or were things fairly steady and then there was a stepwise change that occurred? I'll try to come back to you on that one. Sure, great, thank you. And then this is a pretty broad-based question, but recognizing that this is kind of the first step in consolidating this information, are there specific improvements that we know are kind of on the horizon, or the low-hanging fruit that we would want to be incorporating into this body of work first, or early on as we start to work towards improvements? Yeah, like I think one of the first things we're going to do, and probably one of the most significant things, is that as we start developing these new funding arrangements, so the actual financial agreements, like the grants are distributed through or the operating subsidies are distributed through, just making sure that they follow the new policies and make sure they have very clear outcomes and what the expectations are. Like, I think that in its own is a huge step, and then making it very clear with organizations that there's an expectation of reporting back against those outcomes in a consistent way. So. Those are probably some of the more significant things, and probably the lower hanging fruit, I would say. Got it. And then on the reporting back, I apologize if I missed this, but so beyond kind of the self-reporting of outcomes, what is the work that's done to sort of verify the accuracy of that when those self-reported outcomes are coming back? Yeah, I mean, so across the corporation, whenever we distribute funds and then reporting comes back to those funds, we do check it internally to make sure that the reporting is accurate and is reflective of how the funds were actually spent. So there is a check there. to make sure that the information is accurate and valid and telling the right story.
Okay, great. I'll just wait for the pre-2019 info to come back. If you don't have that now, I can swing back for another round.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. I'm going to pass the chair to Councillor Principe.
I'll take the chair.
Thank you very much. So when I started to go through this with all the numbers, I started trying to figure out ROI for each of the different areas, but then realized there's a lot that you can't just say for every dollar we've invested, we've got a return of so much on it. And so I think that's why sort of we've gone to sort of more looking at the outcomes rather than dollar return. Is that right?
So yeah, so we outcome reporting is focused on more of those overarching benefits, those societal impacts and things like that is what you're looking at. So what you're talking about, that's something to consider as well. So specific metrics, outputs and activities, so we track those as well. So all of that, you got to look at it cohesively as one.
Okay, and some of them too is sort of the downstream savings, I guess. If we're looking at the one that comes to mind is responding to with naloxone. I can't remember, it's in here. But and saving lives and the health savings, healthcare savings as well. Do we take that into consideration as being positive outcomes?
Certainly.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm just going back to actually our the audit report that we had, was that earlier this week or last week? It indicated that there was a couple outstanding audits related to the grants and subsidies recommendations, but they were good. They were to be met this month, and I think we were on track. Is that right?
Yeah. So this would have been one of them, the outcomes reporting.
Okay.
So this is probably the biggest outstanding item for that audit.
Okay, and so that's there was evaluate grant programs and subsidies and monitor and report. So that's taking both of these ones as being met then, or both those audit recommendations are being met with this report?
We believe they're being met, and so this is something we got to talk to the auditor about. So next time when they bring their dashboard, they will look at this process and they'll check it off saying it's done or there's more work to do.
Okay, perfect. And and this is as of 2024. Next council will not be provided any additional numbers for 2025.
Next September we'll come back with 2025.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then that would be in time then for the new budget cycle, correct?
Correct. Yeah. There's always going to be that 1 year lag with this reporting.
Okay. I think. Well, I'll just ask this one, it's more detailed. On the regional prosperity, talking about the Affordable Housing Investment Program, it says it includes funding from the Government of Alberta, but that's over and above the 24 million that's listed in the report? Or does that 24 million include what we received from Alberta and Canada?
Do you want to reference which page you're looking at?
We're looking at page 5 of 7 of attachment 1.
Okay, give me 1 second here. And if someone else knows the answer, they can definitely chime in. And what was the line item, Councillor?
The top one, Affordable Housing Investment Program, and then in brackets it has includes funding from the Government of Alberta and Canada. I'm thinking.
Yes, so that would be inclusive of those flow-through grants from the government of Canada and the province.
Oh, okay. So then what would be our portion of that?
Let me look into that. I can get you that number.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll continue on. Then I'll take the chair back.
I'll return the chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jans.
Thank you for this. It's really good information, and I'm glad that councillors will have this before the next budget because I think it would be very valuable. So again, kudos to admin for pulling all this together. It looks like a lot of work. My question is how this intersects with our broader real estate strategy, especially as it pertains to attachment 14.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Jens. In terms of how this fits, it ensures the Things that the city is doing in terms of making investments into these spaces, that we are ensuring that there's a return outcomes wise on that investment. In terms of our activity in nonprofit leasing altogether, there was a reference to the review that we're undertaking, and as part of that, there are a few different things that we're hoping to address. Those would be periodic leased asset reviews, documenting our leasing processes, improving role clarity, improving leasing equity and transparency, raising leased asset condition awareness, and annual nonprofit leasing portfolio reporting, which ties into this MFA. So I'd say overall, in terms of how it ties back to the work on our overall strategy, ensuring that there's an awareness of the space that's allocated for these purposes, as well as ensuring that there's an awareness of the asset conditions and decisions that need to be made around those spaces, whether that is continuing to invest into the properties or eventual disposition of those or other actions as required. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, it's valuable. I guess I'm wondering about so maybe if I paraphrase, so there is another exercise going on that's reviewing, say, the operational costs, the deferred maintenance costs, those other costs that go into the facility, whether or not they're included in a lease or not, and then looking at that versus the value of just the land sale and disposition and relocation of the tenants to a different city facility or site.
Yes, Councilor, that's correct.
Okay, and what would be kind of the timeline on that kind of work?
We're hoping to return to council in the first or second quarter of 2026.
So pre 4-year budget.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Again. Yeah. Kudos. This is very valuable. I look forward to the future discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. Councillor Tang.
Great. Thank you very much. I can see how much work this is. So thank you. So just so I can understand a bit of a process, I was wondering why this was an item for City Council non-regular versus a regular City Council versus a committee, like an executive committee.
So maybe clerks can help me out a bit with this one. Our intention was always to bring it to the City Council.
Okay.
So the outcome report comes to the City Council. So I think we were just trying to find a time slot when we could bring it, and this date worked.
Gotcha. So there's no particular reason why it's non-regular.
There was no particular reason why it had to be non-regular.
Okay. And then just in terms of some of the earlier conversation around, because of the transition with the election, you will do this presentation again as part of the orientation and then kind of feed into the next 4-year budget, correct?
Yeah, this information will be shared as a part of the orientation package, the information package, so that it'll be provided there, and then we'll do an updated report for 2025 outcome reporting next year.
Because I mean, I see this sort of a parallel to some of those results-based budgeting presentations from different departments, but this is a significant portion outside of, the city corporation. So I feel like that makes sense in my head. Okay.
The timing will actually work out really good with the 4-year budget discussion, because of the next year's reporting will come right before that budget discussion, and it'll give us a year to kind of work on improvements as well.
I was curious about like the 4 strategic goals. Your thoughts around this very small proportion delegated to climate resilience, for example. Does the finding of this, let's say, allow some administration to rethink about any grant or other funding opportunities so that there's, I don't know, more opportunities in that particular strategic goal?
So I think it allows us to see, like taking a step back from an overall perspective of where most of our funding lands. And I think if we see a misalignment with our priorities, maybe that will give us some indication if we need to adjust. So this is kind of what this reporting does. It allows us to look at it from that corporate perspective, and adjust if we need to, or if council directs us to adjust if we need to.
I was a little bit surprised to see that, I'll be honest. So I'm just curious if administration have further thoughts around that. Like, oh, wow, didn't realize that we were doing so little about it. Maybe we should consider X, Y, Z.
So just one thing I want to highlight there is that this, one of the things in this report, we're showing you the cash that's actually gone out the door, like the expenses that have been incurred for the year. So there actually could be more money committed in the budget to these categories, these different goals. This is what's been spent in the year. right? So if
And,
some,
and this is all operating, not budget, I mean, not capital. So, like if I think about some of the investment we made in retrofits, district energy, for example, that would not be, that's just city spending, not external.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is just, this is funding we give to other organizations, not money we've invested
Yeah.
internally in our own stuff.
No, I get that. Anyways,
Right, yeah.
I would just feel like, you know, if I were looking at this, I will be wondering, you know, is that a gap? You know, I don't know if it is, but looking at the pie chart, for example, that's the question that piqued for me.
It is also, Councillor, tied to budget. So if you, what we're reporting is grants and subsidies, and often grants are part of a program. If you don't have a program within the budget, you won't see us then make grants, and you will then not see it show up here. So it does tell you
For sure.
where there's a balance, but it is tied to,
Yeah.
to funding. We can't make the decision to develop grant programs without budgets, so it's innately tied to budget.
So maybe one option down the road could be, well, maybe we could benefit from more program in this particular priority area. I'm just spitballing here. And then just in terms of next year's reporting, because you've identified a number of areas that you can do to improve, like, would you, like, are we on a path where we want to say tying dollars to outcomes? I guess I'm wondering process-wise, what is going to be different next year that could help some of the external bodies articulate, better articulate, like, the outcomes that we're trying to achieve and that kind of stuff?
Similar to when I was talking to Councillor Salvador, I think one of the things we got to do is in our funding arrangements, we have to make it really clear and consistent about what the outcomes are we're trying to achieve with the money we're putting out the door. And I think we have to be really clear with our external agencies in terms of what we expect them to do with that money and the reporting back they need to do to show how they spent that money. So that's what we're going to try working on this upcoming year.
Okay.
And I think you'll see improvements over the years in this report as it comes forward, as that process matures and gets better.
This was really impressive, but thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. Councillor Paquette?
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for the report. I just, I'm curious about the micro grants. Like, I would assume it costs as much as to administer as the grants that go out, but some community folks might be worried that now that's sort of a door closed to them unless they're a nonprofit or have an organization, then that becomes unattainable for most people. I understand that may be the way it is, but any thoughts on that?
I mean, ask someone else maybe to help with this one.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'm talking about like under 1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want us to ask your question one more time as well?
Yeah, just, you know, have we got any community feedback on that? You know, it's a little bit more onerous now for something simple that's community building.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, yeah.
And, yeah.
So we did, if I'm understanding your question properly, we did adjust this process to make sure that it wasn't very impactful on those organizations receiving micro grants like that. So we're only asking organizations that receive $250,000 above to do this outcome reporting.
Okay, what I'm talking about is the very, very small grants, like $500 or $100 that an individual would apply for to host like a community barbecue and things like that. Now, I don't think that that's available to them anymore. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Maybe someone else can. Stacy seemed
Count-
Ms.
Councillor
Gladley,
Paquette,
did you want to answer that?
I'll pass it over to Judy. Thank you. Sorry, we're both trying to get in to answer. Judy Smith, I'm the Director of Community Investment. And no, Councillor Paquette, this won't stop us from offering little micro grants to groups. We've actually been doing some really innovative work in our area and community services to try to make sure that groups don't have to become a society. They can have fiscal agents. We work with other bigger organizations to do capacity building and offer small grants for small projects. So I think we're okay in that area, and we've kept that in mind as this work has moved forward.
Okay, thank you. That's great. And then my other question would just be around the sort of like the mid-tier grants. You know, sub $1 million, but over 500,000, and sort of like where we find the balance between the oversight versus, you know, we're chasing dollars that really the chase isn't worth the catch, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, so,
I think-
yeah, so go ahead, Judy.
I'll just jump in there too. Well, as I think this process is trying to right-size things, so we have bit more expectations for those bigger funding amounts. Still have expectations, still expect some outcomes, but and data, but keeping it simpler. So every level of funding, we're getting information back from and supporting folks in what we need from them, and finding ways to do that that's meaningful for them and help them in their looking at their programs and activities as well.
Okay, that's great, because even though these are the smaller grants, in aggregate, it's quite a bit of money. And so it can become kind of politically sensitive if we don't have reporting that is commensurate with the amount that's actually going out. Does that make sense?
Yes, and as an example, even with our community investment operating grant, we've added some expectations, some outcomes, even though it's just to operate, to say you have to be more inclusive and help remove barriers to participation, and people are responding to that in their final reporting.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. Again, great report.
Thank you, Councillor Paquette and Councillor Principe.
Thank you, Chair Wright. I have a question about ABC's acting as a fiscal agent for other organizations. How do we monitor that, or do we?
So maybe just explain that to me just a bit more so I can help answer that question.
Just in the readings, one of the organizations, one of the ABCs, had written that they act as a fiscal agent for another organization. So I wasn't sure if we had any parameters in that of which other organizations they can act as a fiscal agent for, or is it just granting? Like, I'm not sure I understand that concept or that term.
I'm not
fiscal
sure
agent.
we would get into the governance of an ABC at that level, but maybe you can point out to the specific ABC and they can answer your question.
Okay, so is someone on the line? I can ask those questions now? Yeah, okay, thank you. From REACH?
Yes, I'm here, Councillor Principe.
Hi there. Yeah, just thank you for being here and being able to answer this question, hopefully. It was for the OPV, the Organization for Prevention of Violence, and in there it was written that REACH acts as a fiscal agent, so and as well as through shared office space. But can you explain how you are acting as a fiscal agent?
Sure, I should have told you my name is Jan Fox. Thanks for the question. So there's a number of controls that we have over it. So it does definitely get audited as part of our regular audit procedure. So every piece of dollars that we work on for them definitely comes through that. So we would, when we first began with working with OPV, they were a much smaller organization and they didn't have the capacity to come to council and ask for a service package. So they worked through us and have continued to do so. And we assist them as a fiscal agent, as you said, but we assist them for giving them office space. But I think most importantly, they're building, it's really the part of work, it's a work of REACH as it comes to capacity building. So the idea is to help them start up, scale up, and then we set them free, and they're really moving towards that now. So they are able to access money from other levels of government, but there are significant controls over our work as a fiscal agent through our annual auditing procedure.
So when you're acting as a fiscal agent, is that like a yearly grant, or is that a continual operating expense? I'm not sure.
So the dollars that the city has given REACH have been specific for the Office for the Prevention or the Organization for the Prevention of Violence. And so they didn't have, for example, a CFO or ability to manage finances the same way. We had the capacity to do that. So we accept the money, we provide it to them, and then we help them monitor their spending. They report their outcomes to us. So the documents that you've got before you around the outcome reporting from REACH include specific outcomes that they've reported to us. I also have my CFO on the line here too, so she might want to jump in to just give further clarification. Adele, do you want to?
Hi. That is true. We do assist them with capacity building. We do monitor their finances. It comes through ongoing payment through our operating funds that we get annually. Initially was approved as a service package, ongoing.
Okay, and then I do have another question about there was a project for Alberta Council of Women's Shelters and Maskin, and it said that it's a shelter in Calgary. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not grant money going to a shelter in Calgary, or is it?
Is that question?
Sorry, I was on mute. Go ahead. Adele, you start and then I can, if you don't know, I can either.
Is that question for Reach Edmonton?
Yes.
Yes.
Was that in our report?
Yes.
Okay, one second. We've not provided any financial support. I think we're part of their working group talking about what they need, but we've never provided financial assistance to them. So,
Okay,
I mean,
we're out of time here, and maybe Councillor
I'll
Principe, you
move
can
another round.
locate the do you want move
Second.
another round? Sorry,
Second.
Councillor Tang, second. Please vote.
I'm a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. Just waiting for one vote. Councillor Cartmel, are you there?
I am. It didn't come through. I'm a yes.
Thank you. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried, and we'll move on to a second round with Councillor Salvador.
Great, thank you. Were we able to get some more information on the pre-2020?
Yes, we were. So the funding levels, like from 2018 to 2019, were fairly consistent with what you see for 2020. And then from 2020 to 2021, they jumped up due to those housing grants we were talking about.
Got it. Okay, that's really helpful context. Thank you so much for sharing that piece. I wanted to just ask about, okay, so I see the energy transition rebate program represented and included. I'm just wondering about SEEP, the Clean Energy Improvement Program. Is that because it's not technically a grant? Or I'm just wondering where that might be represented, or if that is separate.
I'll look into that and get back to you.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It's a good question.
Okay, yeah, I would just appreciate knowing where that kind of fits in, because it seems to be the direction we're moving in terms of supporting communities with energy retrofits. So I'll ask a different question about, keeping track of or monitoring outcomes associated with how our investment is potentially helping organizations leverage other funding sources from other orders of government. And most often, I think we talk about it in the form of housing investment, leveraging provincial and federal dollars. Are those leveraged funds considered kind of one of the things that would be tracked as an outcome?
So we've asked for that information. And so a lot of the agencies, boards, and commissions reported back on how they were able to leverage our funds to get more funds, but I don't think specifically we've put that as an outcome requirement in our funding arrangements. It's something we can definitely consider.
Okay.
And just to answer your questions on SEEP,
Yeah.
so the way the SEEP program works, sorry, it just took me a while to remember how that program works. So it's essentially money that the city loans to the property owner, and then it's repaid through future property taxes. So it doesn't really fit in cleanly in any of these categories in here.
Yeah.
But something we can take away to think about how we show that moving forward.
Sure, yeah, and recognize it doesn't fit nicely within these ones.
Yeah. And I mean, that's some stuff we found as we were going through as well. Like as we went through, we started finding different types of funding, and we were trying to figure out where they go in the categories. So there may be some other ones that we're not totally capturing yet that we'll catch.
Okay, great. And then just the final one. I know some of the ABCs, and I'll use EAC, the Edmonton Arts Council, as an example, just 'cause I'm quite familiar with them. I know they're doing some work specifically around return on investment, and I know we're talking outcomes today, which is slightly different than ROI, but if organizations are doing that work and sort of undertaking that body of work, I guess I would just want to flag, I think there's a good opportunity to kind of piggyback on that and be able to include some of that in what we're capturing on our outcome side too.
Agreed.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Salvador. Councillor Tang?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, just pull back at I'm looking at the overall amount from 2020 to 2024. It's a pretty substantial jump, and it looks like there's a lot more, like a jump in subsidy, for example, growth in the ABCs post-COVID. I was wondering if you can kind of comment a little bit about the trend, kind of why, for example, why are we doing more subsidy, more than versus grant? Is administration finding maybe one type easier to deliver than another?
Yeah, so the increase was over those 5 years was a large increase. Some of it was related to grant programs. So around 31 million of that increase was a result of our grant programs, our internal grant programs. The biggest one being the housing grant programs. And then we saw an increase to agencies, board, and commissions of 27 million as well. So that was another fairly relatively large increase, and that happens through the budget process. When the agencies and boards are here going through the budget, they were allocated more by council through that budget process. So those were the two biggest increases.
Okay. And then I think I'm wondering if the overall growth, how does it compare to the growth of the city's budget overall? Like, are they pretty in line? Yeah.
I'd have to look at that to answer that.
Like, are they parallel? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I can't say for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious about that. And then just on the matching funding, because you talk about how some of this is to stimulate matching funding, do you have a sense of like what magnitude or how much kind of overall 240 something million generated this dollar figure of, and it doesn't even have to be with other orders of government, because I think some of our economic development was also stimulating direct private sector investment too. So I was wondering, were you able to capture that?
Yeah, and not on a consolidated basis, Councillor. So we weren't able to say like $240 million went out the door, and this is how much agencies were able to leverage. But each of the agencies reported back on how they were leveraging our dollars, and I would say we saw that they were able to leverage and get funds because of the city funding we provided them.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'm looking for a bit of like overall trend, for this portion generated 2x, 3x, but that's okay. I appreciate that answer. And then I was also just wondering maybe a very specific question. I was curious why the Downtown Vibrancy Fund was categorized under business related, because I had thought some of those grants actually went to just community organizations for activation and not necessarily business economic related. So
Councillor Tang, it's Tom Gervin, Director of Downtown Economy. The Downtown Vibrancy Fund did provide funding to businesses and organizations. So your assumption is correct. The majority of funding actually did go to nonprofit and not-for-profit organizations. So some of them more in the business category, such as the Edmonton Downtown Business Association. So.
Okay. Anyway, so I'm like, is that the right place for it? And I guess related to vibrancy, because I didn't see anything related to Chinatown Vibrancy Fund, because I know there's a few businesses that benefited from, I think there were grants, and I just didn't see that here, or even, an agency like Chinatown Transformation Collaborative. How does that categorized in this?
So, Councillor Tang, it's located in two places in Attachment 1. So you'll see the Chinatown Strategy Plan under Urban Places. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it's under that category is because in 2024, the plan was focused on structures and crime prevention. So this is a little bit of a best fit.
Okay.
And you'll see the Chinatown Vibrancy Grant under Regional Prosperity. And the reason it's positioned there is because those grants primarily focused on economic development outcomes. And again, because this is outcomes reporting, we really looked at the impact and the outcomes that these generated, and
chose the best fit according to that.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to recall, there's a few reports, and then, so Arts Habitat, for example, that would be under, I don't know where.
I can look into that.
Yeah,
Give me a second. Yeah.
Yeah, because we have had some conversation about even just the governance of some of these, how do you kind of categorize that? Anyways, thank you, that's it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tang. Councillor Principe?
Thank you, Chair Wright. Councillor Tang asked a lot of the questions I was going to ask. So I just wanted to follow up with REACH about it was on attachment 3, page 4. Sorry, attachment 13, page 4.
I see it. Okay, so I'm just, sorry, I'm scrambling a little bit because the staff member who's specifically involved in that is away on bereavement leave, and I can't follow up with the specifics. But I can assure you that there was no dollars that came from the REACH budget towards a Calgary project. I very much believe that this is a collaborative that we're working on with them to bring the training opportunity here to the youth in Edmonton. I think they spearheaded it, and as part of our ongoing work with the Alberta Council of Women's Shelters, I think that's part of that as well. We work really closely with them on our human trafficking initiative. But I can, if you would permit me, I'll give you really specific information by Monday morning.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
But I just do want to assure you that there's no dollars coming from our budget to anywhere in Calgary.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And then is someone online from Heritage Council?
Yes, Councillor. David Ridley here.
Hi there. I just wanted to ask you a question about some of the initiatives. They were very specific, like one was for translation into different, like a program where, or a project where there was translation into different languages. But then some of the other, which was great because it's very specific, and then some of the other ones were just partnership. And I'm not sure exactly what the partnership was. Did you just go attend, or was it some grant money involved? How it was supported? So just wondering if you could go explain that a little bit more.
Sure, thanks for that. That's regarding the Edmonton Living Rooms virtual exhibit, Councillor. That's the one where the translation work was done.
Right.
So we received substantial funding from the help with that through the Government of Canada. And then other partnerships were with the multicultural health brokers in terms of connection with the community and developing those. So there isn't much elaboration in that on that, but that was certainly part of it. There's also a note about this work drew some international interest from some of the National Museum of Cultures in Mexico City. So we put that in there as well, but that was an online seminar. Does that help?
Sorry, you know what? I was just saying that was a really good example. That one was a very good example of explaining what happened. Yeah, and I was just asking about some of the other ones that you had mentioned. I wasn't sure if they were just grants that came, like Black Heritage Roundtable in partnership. So it doesn't really say what Edmonton Heritage Council contributed. Was it through grants? Was it?
It was through a contribution of funds to that, using the Black History Month initiative as an example, through the contribution of funds along with the other funders, including the Edmonton Community Foundation. And then we also developed a report, an internal report on that. Promoted those events as when we had the information. So it was more active around that table and developing that initiative than simply the contribution of money.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you for answering those questions.
Thank you, Councillor Principe. Can you take the chair?
I'll take the chair.
Thank you. Whoops. Do you have an answer for my question in regards to the Affordable Housing Investment Program?
Yes, we do, Councillor Wright.
you.
Of the 24 million, 21 million was city funded, 2.8 million was from the federal government, and the remaining 0.9 million was from the provincial government.
Okay, thank you very much, because I thought we were pretty close to that 20 some odd million for us, so I just want to know what portion was for the feds as well. Okay, no, I think that's all I have, and seeing no other questions, I'll take back the chair.
I'll return the chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Stevenson, you selected the item. Did you want to make a motion?
I just realized I didn't make a motion to begin with, which I should have. But yes, I'm happy to move that the September 5th, 2025, Financial and Corporate Services Report, FCS 02979, be received for information.
Second.
Councillor Tang, second. Anyone with other questions or to speak? Councillor Stevenson to close.
Just to say again, really appreciate the depth of work. It's so helpful for us to be able to have that compiled together, and the questions I think just speak to the interest and the value in this information. I think the next steps and further maturation of this work is something that's going to add a ton of value to our work and to our decision making. So thank you so much for this first step, and look forward to the conversations ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please vote.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried, and we don't want to adjourn too quickly now because we have, is it a notice of motion without customary notice?
Yes, if we're talking about the orders of the day, yes, we'll need a two-part motion, so we'll need someone to move to allow another councillor to give notice.
Yeah, so I'll move that we waive the regular
We'll put
notice.
it up on the screen for
you. It's almost there. Thank you. I'll move that City Council waive the rules on providing notice of motion as set out in Section 32 of Bylaw 18155, Council Procedures Bylaw, to allow Councillor Tang to make a motion without notice regarding changes to the council calendar.
Second.
Thank you. Please vote. Unless you have questions.
Councillor Jans?
Yes.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Thank you very much. And Councillor Tang?
Great. I'll move that.
It'll be up on the screen.
Thank you. I will move that the orders of the day for the September 10th, 2025 Executive Committee meeting be changed as follows. Monday, September 8th, 2025. Call to order at 1:30, recess 3:30 to 3:45, adjournment at 5, and continuation on Wednesday, September 10th, 2025, starting at call to order at 9:30, lunch noon to 1:30, recess 3:30 to 3:45, and adjournment at 5 p.m.
Second.
Thank you. Would you like to introduce?
Yep, maybe just quickly, it's a fairly long agenda, so this is how we found some room in the calendar. So we are starting earlier, but my understanding is that some of the items, especially if there's external folks, will make it time specific for Wednesday.
That is correct.
And questions? Councillor Rutherford?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just wondering why we're also not changing the orders for the Community and Public Services Committee. Because I understand we're doing that at the meeting, but if we're here doing this motion now, is there a reason we're not changing those orders?
We can absolutely do that as part of the same motion.
Okay, I think that would just be cleaner and more clear for the public.
Would that
So I'll
be a
move
friendly amendment then to include that? Canceling that meeting?
Yeah. No, not canceling the meeting, that the Community and Public Services Committee meeting orders be changed to adjourn at 12 p.m. Sorry, I can't hear any volume.
I'm sorry. I'm just waiting for the clerk's direction whether we do need to adjourn, or sorry, have the meeting in order to adjourn it.
Well, you do have an item on the agenda.
Yeah.
So normally what we would do when there's an item on the agenda is we would just change the orders of the day and then proceed with another meeting, which is what we can do that. I do appreciate there was some conversation about could we start earlier. I just don't have confirmation from all the members of executive committee that they can be there in the morning, which is why we went with 1:30.
I'm sorry, this is my time right now, so I'd like to highlight that as the chair of Community and Public Services Committee, I'd like to be able to be at executive. There are board-specific items on that agenda, and so I think there's an inequity if we have two meetings overlapping.
Yes, our intention would not be to have two overlapping, so we can absolutely adjust this.
Councillor
Okay,
Steve?
perfect. That was my intention. So I'll, if it's friendly to the Assembly, Madam Chair, my amendment is now 0.1.
Okay, and any objections to that friendly amendment? Then it is considered friendly. And to those online, sorry, there is some conversation around whether or not we can move executive to earlier in the morning. But because the clerk's office has not received confirmation from all councillors that they would be available in the morning, those on executive committee, that's why the request has just been made to start executive committee at 1:30. So that being said, are there any other questions? Anyone to speak? To close, Councillor Tang, let's vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Stevenson, did you have something else to add?
I apologize. Was there more than one member of exec that you were waiting to hear from?
I was waiting to hear from Councillor Principe and Councillor Tang.
That's okay.
Apologies, I don't remember seeing it.
Because we might.
Sorry, I am not available.
Okay.
To her.
No, there we go. We've got the clarity. No further questions.
All right, so seeing that we don't have all members of executive committee available to start at 8:30, we will go ahead with the motion that is on the floor. If there's no other questions, let's vote.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Orders have been changed. I don't think we have any more things to wrap up. So are there any motions pending? Oh, sorry, notices of motion and motions without customary notice. We did that without customary.
I have two notices.
You have a motion?
I have two notices.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Jans.
Thank you. I have two notice of motions that I shared with the clerk. The first is that the administration provide a report on the implications to the leisure access pass criteria in order to allow registered post-secondary students to be eligible for the program. That would be for debate on September 16th council. And the second one is that administration prepare an unfunded service package for consideration at the fall supplemental operating budget adjustment for the creation of a multi-use trail connecting Horlick Park footbridge to the west top of Bank. And again, this would be for debate at the September 16th council meeting.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. Anybody else notice a motion? No, we are adjourned. Thank you.